to overproduce adrenaline. What happens is that they get fatigued. Eventually,
What's up? 筋肉翻訳です。さあ今日はプレワークアウトが筋肉作りの邪魔になる見ていきましょう。プレワークアウト飲んでますか？飲んだことはありますか？プレワークアウトはパンプを促進してくれたり集中力ややる気を高めてくれます。今回は主にカフェインなど興奮作用のあるものについてクリスチャンさんが話をしてくれています。細かい用語が出てきますが、そのことについても説明してくれているのでかなり濃い内容となっています。じっくり見てみてください。どうぞ。
one thing that seems to be really popular among modern trainees, either bodybuilders, powerlifters, CrossFit athletes, is the over-reliance on stimulant pre-workout formula. And I won't name any names because I don't want to bash anybody, but basically it seems like a competition between companies to see who's going to put the most stimulant, the most violent stimulant in their pre-workout formula. Basically, it's almost as bad as amphetamines. Now, of course, it allows you to have more energy in your workout. But there are several problems I see with the overuse of stimulants. First of all, it masks fatigue. Now, fatigue is something you can use to know if your training is adequate. If every time you wake up or every time you go to the gym to train, you're no energy, you're run down, I'm tired, I have to really kick myself to get started, then there's a problem with the amount of volume or intensity you're doing. So you need to scale back or adjust your training choice. Otherwise, you'll always be at 70%. You never reach your maximum. Fatigues mask performance. So the stimulants can fool you into thinking that you don't have a problem and you don't make the necessary adjustment to eventually be able to progress at your optimal rate. So that is the first problem. In effect, it's almost like taking anti-inflammatory drugs. It will mask the pain, but it doesn't get rid of the injury. So it might make you believe that you are fine to train, you won't get injured, but bam, that's why you get injured. So stimulants give you the illusion of having more fuel than you really do and having more capacities than you really do. And eventually the body can become addicted to it. But that's only one part of the problem. The biggest problem, in my own opinion, is that it can really slow down your gains in the long run. The reason is that it will have a very negative impact on your hormonal system. Now, what happens is the stimulants forces the adrenal glands to overproduce adrenaline, which will give you that energy. Now, when those glands become tired, because basically you are asking them to function like in overload all the time. Basically, it's like if your boss asks you to do 20 hours of overtime every single week. At first, it's fun because I'm getting more money and I have the energy for it. But eventually, you burn down. And when you burn out, then you can't function. It's the same thing with your adrenal glands. When you ask them to overproduce adrenaline, what happens is that they get fatigued. Eventually, they can't function properly. So even if you ask them to produce adrenaline because I'm training, you can't produce it. But the body is still under stress, so it needs a way to function, to get that energy going. So it will use a different hormone to get that job done. That different hormone is called cortisol. Cortisol can act pretty much like adrenaline by releasing stored energy. So if you can't produce adrenaline, the body overproduces cortisol. Now, cortisol has several problems. First of all, it can directly impact muscle building. It can actually stop muscle building, both by directly inhibiting mTOR, which is a trigger to build muscle, but also by increasing the expression of what we call the myostatin gene. Myostatin is basically the program in your body that tells you, I don't want more muscle than you already have. So the more myostatin is expressed, the less muscle you can build and the less you can recover. And cortisol increases expression of myostatin. So the higher your cortisol level, the less muscle you can build from your training, and the slower you recover. Another negative impact is that cortisol is fabricated from the same mother hormone as testosterone and estrogen. It's called pregnenolone. So if I'm producing more cortisol, I have less raw material to produce testosterone. And if I don't produce testosterone or estrogen, then my protein synthesis, muscle building, goes down low. The first symptom of low testosterone and high cortisol is you have no libido. A drop in libido for an athlete indicates excessive cortisol production, which means excessive training volume, excessive training stress. And that means you are hormonally imbalanced and you will not progress at the optimal rate. So as you can see, the overabuse of stimulants, I mean, once in a while it's fine, but the overabuse, the reliance on it can mask fatigue, make you train more or using wrong methods, and can actually impact your muscle growth short-term, moderate-term, and long-term. So it's really not a day-to-day solution that you can use in your training.
さあ、いかがでしたでしょうか。過度な摂取により正しく疲労を感じ取ることができない。性欲が落ちていればミオスタチンが過剰に出ている可能性がある。コルチゾールが高まってミオスタチンが過剰だと筋肉がつきづらくなるとのことでした。ざっくりまとめると、自分の体の声を聞ける状態にしようということでしょうか。なので僕はこれを聞いて、たとえプレを使ったとしても自分の体の声を聞けていればそれでいいのではと感じました。ただその声に気づけていない可能性もあります。それがトレーニング前や寝起きの元気のなさであったり、性欲といったバロメーターなんですね。みんなはどんなことで自分の体の声を聞きますか？コメント欄で教えてください。僕はもともと減量中など性欲がなくなったらカロリーや脂質が足りなさすぎるっていうバロメーターにしていました。今は減量中じゃないので追い込みきれるかどうか、パンプはするかどうか、心が元気かどうか、こういったところで心と体の小さな声を聞くようにしています。最後まで見ていただいてありがとうございます。感想や動画のリクエスト、チャンネル登録お待ちしています。ではまた。
I won't look back when you're around. I won't think twice when you're gone. Don't hesitate to call me back. 'Cause you're